Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of MECCA Moments. It's Friday, May 8th, and today we are talking about managing pandemic stress among Latino families. We have Dr. Rubalcava with us and Dr. Mercedes Ebanks. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Doing well.
Hello.
I don't know what week this is during the quarantine, the self-isolating, but we're here again to help people navigate the tough situations that they may be going through. Dr. Ebanks, you want to introduce our wonderful guest today?
Yes, thank you. Hi, this is Dr. Ebanks from the MECCA Group, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Laura Rubalcava. She has been with our team at the MECCA Group for approximately 3 years now, and we certainly have welcomed her, and she has been a true asset to our group. Dr. Rubalcava is a bilingual psychology associate. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. She has 2 Masters of Arts degrees in clinical psychology and community counseling. Her area of specialty is in health psychology. She frequently explores how relationships and health are connected in assisting her clients in building and maintaining strong support networks. Dr. Rubalcava is from San Antonio, Texas, and she is Mexican American. And for those who don't know, I am Cuban American. So we at the MECCA Group do have a group of Latino therapists that are able to provide services to those in need. Welcome, Laura.
The internet connection cut out. I'm sorry about that. Can you finish the last thing you just said?
Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. I'll get started. Sorry about that.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ebanks, for inviting me to talk today. And I'm really thankful to be able to share this information with the Latino community. And first and foremost, I'll be talking about managing COVID-related stress today in the Latino community. It's important to recognize that when we talk about anxiety, we have to understand that it's like a normal, healthy function. And psychologists have long appreciated that anxiety alerts us to threats, and it also motivates us to take good care of ourselves. And I'm ready to, Brandon, if you want to go ahead and start the questions.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have one thing before we start is that we have something in common. We're both from Texas.
Yes.
And so anyone from Texas knows that, yeah, San Antonio, Texas, Dallas, Texas. So we have this enormous pride about being from Texas. So I'm glad to have a fellow Texan on the MECCA Moments, and you're welcome to be an honorary Texan, Dr. Ebanks.
I claim Jersey and New York. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, here in New York City, we know that Black and Brown people are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. More so, especially in the Bronx, where Latinos are disproportionately impacted. Why is that?
There are many reasons as to why we are disproportionately impacted. But what psychologists know in the literature is that they've always been most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable and marginalized populations have always been hit the hardest when it comes to pandemics. The United States, Latinos and people of color have faced generations of systemic discrimination and racism. And the fact that our rates of contracting this illness are high, those people who are impacted most are the ones that have found to have like a comorbidity. So people in our community We have high rates of comorbidities like diabetes and heart disease. And so those are some of the reasons that make us more susceptible to, contracting and passing away from this coronavirus.
And so what can, giving the fact that we know that this is, an issue, regardless of having a pandemic or not, how can we mitigate some of these stressors, some of these conditions, and really help, the Latino community?
Absolutely. There are many ways that we can combat these stressors. One thing that I've been working with my clients on ever since we've started practicing social distancing at the MECCA Group. We are able to see our clients on video, and so fortunately, I've been using some of these methods with my current clients. Some of the advice that I've been giving, some of the recommendations is try your best to separate yesterday from today and tomorrow. And so being conscious of, taking care of our physical health as well as our mental health every single day can help you separate yesterday from today. Do your best to separate your workspace from your play space, from your, space where you just like relax, where you calm down. And I know that that's not an option for a lot of people, but it helps to do that by engaging your senses. So when you start your workday, you can light a candle, you can, get some flowers, try to adjust your space so that you know that you're about to start working. Play some music in the background, some low music that would be helpful and relaxing. And you can have specific nights, create a routine for your children and for your spouse, your mate. Have like date night or family night, right. Movie night every Friday. It's important to engage your physical, to like go on walks every day. That's very helpful. A lot of people are scared to do that, but just as long as you maintain social distancing, it's pretty, it's fine to do so.
I've seen across the country, there has been some challenges in terms of part of the problem has been messaging to Black and Brown communities. How have you reached out to those communities in terms of getting mental health services or practicing safe social distancing characteristics that improve health rather than make it difficult?
Well, one thing that I've been doing is I often work with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation here in Washington, D.C., and I've been giving, they call them charlas, talks on mental health. And so I've been participating in those and presenting some of these strategies that I've talked about on how to manage stress in a healthy way during this time. And, I also have a professional page on Facebook where I put a lot of helpful, they're like memes and just pictures that help create like a buffer for the stress. And I'll go ahead and put the link in here so that you all can like the page and follow the page so that you can continue having reminders show up on your news feed that are going to help you regulate stress.
In general, what are you hearing about the response from the Latino community about this time? What are people saying? How are they coping with this pandemic?
Yeah, my clients and in Latinos in general are finding it hard to cope. I mean, it's very difficult. The news, we're always in a state of like feeling scared, feeling anxious. And it's important to take a break from the news And but what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing is it is very challenging to see negative things happen every single day. If it's not a shooting of an innocent, you know, person, it's really hard to like function when there's compounding stress over and over. And what I hear is just people trying their best to manage the stress levels in their home and take on these multiple responsibilities of being a parent, being a teacher, being, you know, a homemaker, and still being responsible for paying bills. So
Right.
these are very common things that I've been hearing from clients.
Dr. Ebanks?
Yeah, I would certainly want to add to that regarding the financial impact. You know, unfortunately, part of the stimulus checks that were going to be distributed was not going to go to individuals that were undocumented, and that puts a financial, you know, certainly a stress on families where they are, you know, taxpayers and they have worked, but they may not be eligible for all of the benefits that other individuals are able to receive. And so therefore they are concerned about what's going to happen with their, you know, whether it's their rent, their mortgage, feeding their families. If they are not familiar with the English language regarding the children in educating them and helping them with their schoolwork, you know, with distance learning, being able to assist their children with the assignments, having accessibility to the internet or accessibility to a computer to help their children with their homework. So those are things that may not have been really taken into consideration when all of this was suddenly occurred, but how it's impacting people differently when there are language differences, when there are fears. Some families I know that I've spoken with were scared. Is this a time where if ISIS knows everyone is at home, is ISIS now going to, you know, have raids? So there were a lot of fears that were, you know, placed on the hearts of many Latino families, especially those that are undocumented.
And so, given the fear of in some instances, for some community, for some family members, of not having financial security, being the possibility of deportation or being discovered by ICE, and several other issues, how do you cope with all those things among a pandemic? Like, what do you do in those situations? How do you cope with these elevated stressors?
Yeah, some, you know, turn to religion. Some turn really to family, and that is a common thread within the Latino family, is family support. It's a communal, you know, society, being able to rely on one another. So I think that has certainly been a positive, you know, note, and a strength within the Latino families.
And to piggyback on what you said, you know, yeah, family is very, very important. Social connectivity is important. There have been a lot of apps that I have been researching that have been pretty helpful in keeping the connection to family. For instance, it's called House Party, and you get to play games with, you know, your specific group of friends. A lot of people are using Netflix Party, which is watching a movie together and then commenting on, you know, whatever you want to talk about throughout the movie. And we've used a lot of technology to be able to combat not being able to be socially connected physically at this time.
Mm-hmm. And I know one of the other resources is the National Latino Psychology, the National Latino Psychology Association, and they have an abundance of of information and resources that are available to clinicians to share with their clients, as well as even for anyone in the community to be able to access and share and, and use themselves.
We've seen where stigma is a huge problem in other communities. Is there a problem with mental health stigma in the Latino community, and how do you overcome that if there is?
I can jump in. Yeah, absolutely. Latinos often grow up, and ignoring emotions. I find this in the years that I've worked with the Latino community, ignoring emotions, suppressing emotions. There's a whole body of literature on Latino men. When they go in to see a psychologist or a physician, they say, me duele mi espalda, my back hurts, or they'll attribute psychological issues to physical issues, and they'll say, because it's more socially appropriate to say my arm physically hurts, but really what's happening is they're not talking about the psychological experience that they're having. But yeah, definitely Latinos very often will not talk about emotions, and in the community we often say I'm laughing because there's a skit for George Lopez where he says, "Don't go to the doctor because they're going to find something wrong with you." And that's kind of like an example of like how Latinos often grow up. Mm-hmm. Is we don't put attention as much to our psychological experience compared to our physical experience.
So that's a good point. You mentioned the guy going to the doctor and having back problems, and attributing it to physical elements, but how do we recognize psychosomatic kind of things, and how can we help our family members get into the right place for mental health? Like, oh, it's not really your back, it's really stress that's causing this pain. How do we reckon, what signs do we need to look for in our family members or in ourselves when we're stressed out?
Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so what to look out for when our psychological distress is affecting our everyday life. That's when we start seeing that it's important to reach out to a mental health professional, where if it's depression or anxiety, if you're experiencing it so much that it's not letting you focus at work, concentrate, it doesn't let you pay the bills, doesn't let you take care of yourself, then that's when you come and see a healthcare professional, a licensed healthcare professional like us at the MECCA Group. And that's the most important, but it's important to pay attention to your body, pay attention to your experience, especially right now, because very often we'll just say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll call a doctor tomorrow, but really it's imperative, especially right now, to make yourself prioritize your needs right now.
So self-care, it sounds like self-care is one of those things that's very important. Can you give us some self-care tips or self-care strategies or activities that people can do at home
Absolutely.
to care for themselves?
Absolutely. Very often with my clients, we use a lot of technology, but there's this app called Calm, and I have them downloaded on their phones and listen to it like at night before bed, or the Calm app is so amazing. There's a music component, there's a stretching component, like moving your body, and obviously there's mindfulness. Because that's what it's known for, is its mindfulness meditation, part. Another thing that is very, very helpful that you can take anywhere, it's free, it's easily accessible, and it's an exercise called, it's 4-7-8. And it's very easy to remember, because what you do is you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out slowly for 8 seconds. And it's helpful to breathe in through your nose and out your mouth. And the longer you breathe, the better it is for you. Because especially in times like now, we don't really have control over anything going on out there right now.
Right.
But what we can have control over is our own conscious experience. And so if we can control our breathing, we can connect our mind and our body by doing that, and then we can regroup.
Absolutely.
And I would certainly say that to also add to that is knowing what the client enjoys and what they do to normally handle stress, because also within the Latino community, they also look at kind of a holistic approach, an herbalist approach, and really in terms of, again, a religious approach to helping to deal with stress. And I think that's very important to incorporate that also, so that it is looking at providing a way to manage stress or anxiety or whatever they're feeling, putting a label on it, a name to it, as well as treating it from different angles. You know, even in terms of their diet and looking at the foods that they're eating, what is comforting, but also what may be causing some, you know, of, let's say, migraine headaches. You know, what are they consuming that might be also contributing to some of this. So I think working with all professionals that might be also working with the client.
Doctors, how important is it for Latinos to seek out culturally competent health professionals?
Undoubtedly, very importantly, very important. It is truly significant. And I think that's why at the MECCA Group, we have a team of Latino providers. But not only that, we have providers that are culturally sensitive and aware, you know, and are able to work with Latino clients, even if they themselves are not Latino. You know, being culturally sensitive and being culturally aware does not mean you have to be of the same culture. It means that you understand you are able to understand what mental health means and how that relates to that client, and knowing the history behind it, knowing the cultural aspects. So that is what's very important. And for perhaps many Latinos, they don't know how to seek the services, where to start, where to go. If they don't know to go to, you know, National Latino Psychology Association or Psychology Today, or so many of the other, you know, where do they start? And I think that's the information first, is where to help, you know, those in the Latino, Latinx, you know, community to seek services. There are a number of agencies and in Washington, D.C. that are very helpful in helping those in the Latino community. So.
And another way to find a culturally competent, you know, healthcare provider, a licensed healthcare provider, a mental health practitioner, you can go to Psychology Today. They have like a database, and you can just push in, you know, Spanish speaking is what you prefer. But yeah, definitely, we have a really strong team at the MECCA Group that we're ready, you know, to help anybody who speaks Spanish, and we'll also be there for anybody who is just lost and doesn't really know where to go.
I think that's important to know that there are resources out there to help everyone, and anyone who walks through the door can be reached and supported. When you think about the pandemic, we really don't know when we're going to return back to a normal. how do you prepare your clients? How do you prepare people? How do you have these conversations about the new normal to come? How do you prepare them for the unexpected?
Well, one thing that I often do is in working with my clients, I support them in helping them understand how their body individually reacts to stress. And so, because stress is never going to go away, we just get better at managing it when we participate in psychotherapy. And so, when a person knows how they react to particular stresses, they're better able to continue managing added stress.
Dr. Ebanks?
I would certainly agree with Laura on that as well, that I think it's important to help the client understand themselves. And, you know, the goal in therapy is really to understand what the client's goals are. You know, as a therapist, we support the client to reach their goal. So we help to guide them in, you know, looking at their choices and looking at their, you know, decisions. And I think that is what is, you know, continues to be needed, is to understand the client, understand the person that is coming to you, understanding where they are and where they want to be, and helping them, you know, through that process.
So I guess that moves into this question. We know what therapy is. What is therapy not? I guess that's what I'm saying. What are some expectations that therapy can't fix? Go ahead, Dr.
No, I think that is a very, it's a common question, like, you know, and I think for a client to come to the therapist to want them to give them the answer,
Right.
That's not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is for, as I said, the therapist to help the client. We're not there to tell you how you should live your life. We're not there to tell you this is what you should be doing. We're there to help you to get where you want to be, where it is, where and you feel good at what you're doing, you know, because, and to help the client be honest with themselves. You know, as I said, I think people are sometimes say, well, why do I have to pay somebody to talk to? Well, it's not, it's going to someone who is going to be honest, and that you could feel totally comfortable and transparent, because they're not going to judge you. They're not biased. They're listening to you and there to help you. So it's the same way we go to a doctor, to a physician, to tell us, you know, that we're having symptoms of a headache and trying to figure out where that headache is coming from. It's the same way when you go to a therapist, is to say, well, that headache might be related to your stress. And let's figure out where that stress is coming from. Let's figure out where, you know, how to alleviate some of that stress, how to unload, other than just taking an aspirin, because the aspirin could be the quick fix, but it's not going to be long term. So you might need both. You might need the aspirin along with some of those relaxation techniques that Laura spoke about, so that you know how to continue to function when the stress happens, because stress is going to happen.
Yeah.
Dr. Rubalcava, have you seen the expectations of your clients change, or the thoughts and perceptions change during the process of working with you? Did they come with a preconceived notion and find out that, wow, this is very different from what I thought? And are they now telling the world about, you know, the wonders of therapy? Have you seen that kind of transformation?
Yeah, over my career, I have definitely seen that. And really what that speaks to is the fact that well, people really are not very they don't really know, they're not educated on how to, like, what therapy does for you. And what I find in working with my clients is I try my best to help create a framework so that they can know what to expect along the way. And very often always, we work from treatment goals, which are, we'll pick 3 treatment goals, and throughout our time together, we work towards achieving these 3 goals. And every 3 months or so, we look at these goals again, and we look at our progress, and we determine, should we adjust our treatment goals. And so it is a learning process, because the majority of the people I have ever seen really don't know what therapy entails.
And especially within the Latino, community, where there is this stigma that you don't go to, therapy, you don't tell family business, you don't share information, there's other ways to deal with, that stress or depression or anxiety, because they don't know the label. They don't know that it has a name. So when clients do seek therapy, they realize that this is very helpful. This has helped me to look at it differently, look at it from a different lens, and have a different way to combat it, basically. So again, with anything, it's really about learning something new. It could be learning you don't like it. Sometimes learning, maybe that's not the right therapist for me. I like the process, but maybe there's not a good match. It's all of those things, but you learn something new about yourself. I think most people walk away from therapy saying they've learned something about themselves, and that's a goal. That's a huge step.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, about the partnership. That therapy is a partnership, and it's a relationship. And if you aren't satisfied, you should find a way to move on. I think I've heard in the past, the therapist doesn't hear me. I'm not really getting, they aren't culturally competent. How important is it to find a therapist that you can have a good working relationship with?
It's essential. It's essential. If you feel like inside while you're working with somebody, this doesn't feel like it's working, this doesn't, and oftentimes I find clients who are apprehensive of sharing with their therapist, hey, this isn't working for me. Because along the way in therapy, you learn to discover your voice. You learn to be able to express yourself in the moment and feel confident doing so. But early on, if a client doesn't convey that information to the therapist, then, it could make it difficult to continue progressing through therapy together. And so, but if you find that is something that comes up, it's important to either address it with the therapist in the moment, or find another therapist, something that's more comfortable for you.
I think with anything, you want to make sure that you're giving it some time, because it's important to not kind of jump ship just because they said something that challenged you, and therefore you don't like that, or maybe you're not ready to really deal with that. So I think it's very important to give it some time. But with finding the therapist, you ask those questions. You want to get to know the therapist in the sense of their experience and what is it that they could provide for you, just as they want to get to know you. So it is like you said, a relationship that you're building, because you're building a bond. Clients are typically very vulnerable and apprehensive, so that's very important to, walk cautiously, because this is about you, and this is about, your life and your well-being. And that's what therapists want to protect, is your well-being.
And let's talk about that for people who are probably anticipating or going to therapy, let's talk about that resistance that they can expect. You're going to a professional, and like you said, Dr. Ebanks, you're going to start talking about things that make you very uncomfortable, and not to give up, right? It's not going to be like a walk in the park. So you can expect some sort of tension, but it's not an exit. It's going to be hard work. And can you talk about that? What can people expect when they go to therapy? The honest truth when they go to therapy.
Absolutely. Very often, part of our job is, to offer kind of like a mirror. We help people understand how they function in everyday life by just learning how they function in the therapy room. And we do that gently. We do it respectfully, and it's scary because, when therapy works, the client is being vulnerable, and it's scary to be vulnerable sometimes, but it's very worth it. Also, that's why it's so important to find somebody that you are comfortable with and to not give up, because there's just like working out. Like if I said I want to start going to the gym, and
which I would never say.
So if we did, right? And that first week, it's going to be tough. If you're used to not working out, you're going to go to the gym. You're going to be sore when you leave. You're going to be like, oh, do I have to go again? Tomorrow. But when you go to therapy, it goes in waves. It gets better. You can expect that you're going to build clarity, and it's going to, help you manage stress, but it's also going to work on improving your relationships and the quality of communication that you have with your loved ones. One thing that I often see in the Latino community is when somebody starts going to therapy, oftentimes they start communicating differently with their loved ones, and they get some resistance from loved ones, where if it's a teen that I'm working with and they go back into their family unit and they start communicating differently or with emotions, oftentimes some of the feedback they'll get is, well, who are you? We don't talk about that here, so that's something that you can see in therapy. But at the same time, one thing that's beautiful about our culture, about the Latino culture, is that we are malleable when it comes to group health. I've worked with families who have children who struggle with excessive weight. And one factor that is a positive for our community is when we implement a change to the family instead of just one person, you start seeing everybody lose weight. And so that is very, very, that's a strength in our culture.
Yeah. I would certainly, agree with that it's also to understand that everyone's not going to be ready for the change that you're going to be making, and how you're seeing things and how you are thinking about things. So that's important, that not everyone's going to be making accepting your progress, and that's okay. But the one thing I certainly would also recommend is not to wait until it builds up, because it's important to know that therapy is not just for a crisis situation. Therapy is to help through a transition, helping through a decision. So you don't want to wait just for a physical, just like for a physical, issue. You don't want to wait until you no longer can walk to go to the doctor. You don't want to just wait till it's bikini season to start going to the gym. You start working on those things beforehand, so going to to a therapist because you're trying to make a decision between employment or going back to school, you're gotten out of a relationship and you're considering going into another relationship. So there are things in that can help you help you transition, as I said, help you make a decision, help you cope before it now just builds up into anxiety or it builds up into, depression. Perhaps you have experiencing grief, as we spoke last week, and you kind of kept putting in the back burner. You're not trying to deal with it. You're not trying to deal with it. And then now it's built where it's making you not even being able to, get out of your bed, so that kind of looking at it from kind of small steps and kind of introducing yourself, finding a therapist that you could, start building a relationship with. And the same way you have a physician or you have a trainer, you go to the gym, you get to know a trainer, the same way.
Speaking of the relationships that might alter, because if therapy is working, there will be some changes in our behavior. And so how do you deal with those family members, your friends who recognize that behavior and don't really know how to respond to those new changes? That new you who's more optimistic or questions behavior or sets boundaries. How do you work with and deal with people who notice the changes and maybe not like it so much?
That's a really good point. I often see this, and when your environment is not welcoming to this new, emotionally more mature person, it makes things challenging for the client, because as the client continues to receive treatment, they become stronger and stronger. They build what we call ego strength, and they're able to, defend themselves in the moment. They're able to know like what vocabulary to use when they are confronted with resistance from the family. What I do is I do role plays in treatment, in therapy. We have almost everybody I work with undergoes assertiveness communication training. And what we do is we just practice in the room. Okay, so this is the scenario. Let's see how you responded in the moment. Show me what that looks like. And then let's see what it would look like if we use this assertiveness, way of speaking. And we talk about how the other person would respond to this particular, terminology. And sometimes, there's a concept in psychology called radical acceptance, where, maybe your environment, maybe the people in your environment will not be welcoming to this new version of you. And maybe you'll just have to, accept that that's a part of reality and continue to practice these skills that you've learned in therapy, at work or, at school. And so that's kind of how we deal with it.
Wrap it up. Sorry, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming and talking about the importance of mental health and what the Latino community can do to improve their overall well-being. Dr. Ebanks, would you like to provide some information about?
Oh, certainly. This is a month of, I would say, celebration. We just had, Cinco de Mayo. At the end of the month, we'll have Memorial Day. And even though those celebrations might be different than we are normally doing, but it's still very important to, look forward to things, celebrate with your family, celebrate your heritage, celebrate, your accomplishments. There's a lot of graduations. There's, students who have accomplished their degrees from high school to college to elementary school. So time for recognition, I would, say. But this is also a time for awareness, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it is, again, we encourage, all viewers and friends of viewers to either recognize that they may need some assistance, or that they may have a friend or a family member that needs some assistance. So we at the MECCA Group, again, we have bilingual therapists. We have a team that is excellent in providing culturally sensitive services. But again, if we're not the place for you, find, services for you. There are, we will provide some further information regarding some links that, to, again, distribute and share this, video with others, share the information, because if it doesn't help you, it could help someone else. So again, we thank you. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Dr. Rubalcava.
And in the spirit of reaching out, Dr. Laura, Dr. Ebanks, can you give a message to our Spanish speakers out there of hope and, whatever, something that they could hear?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening, guys. And I really hope that this video can help motivate you to seek out some treatment when you do feel distressed and anxious. Si tienen preguntas, pueden llamar al the MECCA Group aquí en Washington, D.C., en noreste, and northwest, right? And so, si tienen preguntas, estamos aquí para ustedes.
Es muy importante para tener tu salud mental, la misma manera que tú tienes tu salud física.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. And I guess we'll see you back here
next week.
Next week.
So, next week we have Ms. Kim Edwards, who will be speaking about again, working with children and families during the pandemic.
All right, sounds good. Okay, bye.
Bye, thank you.